Chapter 1. The Legacy Begins. In the northern part of the Korean peninsula lies a country shrouded in mystery, North Korea. At the heart of its story is a family whose influence has shaped the nation for more than 70 years, the Kim dynasty. This chapter takes us back to the beginning of this legacy, introducing Kim Jong-il and setting the stage for the rise of his son, Kim Jong-un. Once upon a time, North Korea was part of a single Korea, a peninsula united under the rule of the Joseon dynasty. But the winds of change and the storms of war divided the land into two in the mid-20th century. In the north, a new leader emerged, Kim Il-sung, who founded a country under the principles of self-reliance known as Juche. His leadership would begin a dynasty, a family line that would control the country with an unyielding grip. Kim Il-sung's reign was marked by a fierce independence and a strict regime that isolated North Korea from much of the world. He was not just a political leader. He was turned into a near mythical figure by state propaganda, revered and loved by many, feared and obeyed by all. His legacy was destined to be carried on by his son, Kim Jong-il, whose upbringing and preparation for leadership were unlike any ordinary child's. Born in the aftermath of the Korean War, Kim Jong-il grew up in the shadows of revolution and reconstruction. The country around him was rebuilding from the ruins of a devastating conflict, under the watchful eyes of his father, who was busy constructing a nation and a narrative that would support their rule. Kim Jong-il was introduced to the intricacies of power from a young age, attending important meetings and military parades. His every step groomed towards leadership. As he matured, Kim Jong-il's personality began to show distinct traits. His interests in arts and film were encouraged, perhaps as tools he would later use to craft his image and that of North Korea. He was known for his meticulous nature and attention to detail, traits that would define his leadership style. Behind the scenes, he was preparing to take over a role that was less of a position and more of a persona crafted through decades of storytelling and power. Kim Jong-il's rise to power was not sudden. It was a slow and steady journey marked by significant events that were carefully orchestrated. His father, Kim Il-sung, gradually introduced him to the public life of North Korea, allowing him to take on roles that showcased his capability and leadership. By the time Kim Il-sung passed away in 1994, Kim Jong-il was ready to ascend to the highest seat of power. His father's death marked the end of an era and the beginning of his own rule, which would eventually pave the way for his son, Kim Jong-un. The country mourned Kim Il-sung with an intensity that echoed the godlike status he held. It was during this time of national grief that Kim Jong-il took the reins and steered North Korea through its next chapters. His leadership came at a time of great hardship, including a famine that challenged the resilience of the North Korean people. Through it all, the legacy of the Kim dynasty held strong, supported by an unwavering propaganda machine that kept the family at the forefront of North Korean identity. As the years passed, Kim Jong-il prepared his own son, Kim Jong-un, to take over. This preparation was shrouded in secrecy, with little known about Kim Jong-un until he was publicly revealed as his father's successor. Like his father before him, Kim Jong-un was brought up in a world where leadership was not just about ruling a country, it was about continuing a legacy that was interwoven with the very fabric of North Korean society. Thus, the stage was set for Kim Jong-un. From the deep roots laid by his grandfather to the powerful but tumultuous reign of his father, his inheritance was a country unique in its isolation and governance. As Kim Jong-il's life drew to a close, The young Kim Jong-un was about to step into a role that was centuries in the making, a role that he was born into, a legacy that he was destined to inherit. The story of the Kim dynasty is not just about power. It is about the creation of a narrative so strong that it binds a nation together under the rule of one family. As we turn the page, the next chapter in this saga begins with Kim Jong-un, a leader prepared to hold on to his family's legacy and forge his path in the annals of North Korean history. Chapter 2: Early Life of a Future Leader. In a country closely guarded from the eyes of the world, a young boy named Kim Jong-un was born. His birth in the early 1980s marked the beginning of a journey that was unlike any other child's in North Korea. While the exact details of his early years are shrouded in mystery, it is known that from a young age, Kim Jong-un was prepared for a future of significant importance. The early chapters of Kim Jong-un's life were set in Pyongyang, the capital of North Korea, where he lived in secure and private compounds. These were not ordinary homes but palatial residences, befitting a future leader. His childhood was one of privilege, but also of isolation, as he was mostly kept away from the public eye. His playmates were carefully selected, and his every move was watched over by attentive caretakers and security personnel. Despite these unusual circumstances, like any child, he had interests and hobbies, developing a particular fondness for basketball. As Kim Jong-un grew, his father, Kim Jong-il, decided that part of his education would take place not within the confines of their secretive state, but abroad, in Switzerland. This decision was part of a plan to give him exposure to the world outside the tightly controlled environment of North Korea. Under an assumed identity, Kim Jong-un was sent to study in a public school in Switzerland. This experience would be one of the most ordinary periods in his life, offering him a glimpse into a world vastly different from his secluded homeland. In Switzerland, Kim Jong-un attended school like any ordinary boy, though under the constant watch of his protectors. He learned to speak English and German, besides his native Korean, and his classmates knew him as a quiet, reserved young student with an interest in sports. His time in Switzerland was a break from his destined role, a brief interlude where he could experience life without the immense responsibilities that awaited him. He made a few friends, enjoyed playing basketball, and lived a relatively normal life, albeit temporarily. However, this period abroad was also a time of deep learning and observation. Being in a democratic country, where opinions were freely expressed and governance was markedly different from what he knew back home, provided Kim Jong-un with unique insights into various forms of leadership and society. These experiences subtly shaped his understanding of the world, providing him with perspectives that were both broad and deep. After several years in Switzerland, the future leader returned to North Korea. His perspective undoubtedly broadened, yet his destiny firmly rooted in the expectations of his lineage. Back home, his education continued, now more focused than ever on preparing him for the role he was born into. He attended the Kim Il-sung Military University, a premier institution where he was trained in the arts of leadership and military strategy. Here, he was not just a student, but a direct descendant of the nation's founder, groomed to inherit the most powerful position in the country. This period of his life was crucial. It was a time when the values and practices of his grandfather and father were deeply ingrained in him. The lessons were not just academic, they were imbued with the ideology and philosophy of the Kim dynasty. His tutors and mentors were some of the most trusted and loyal officers and officials, ensuring that his education aligned with the expectations of his future role. Kim Jong-un's early life was a blend of the ordinary and the extraordinary, of private lessons in Switzerland and military training in North Korea. As he stepped into young adulthood, the weight of his future role began to loom larger. His experiences abroad had given him a window to the world, but his path was always leading him back to North Korea. By the time he returned permanently to Pyongyang, Kim Jong-un was a young man prepared for the complexities of leadership in one of the most secretive and unique nations on earth. His upbringing, both sheltered and privileged, had equipped him with an understanding of both the broader world and the very specific realm he was to govern. As we close this chapter on his early life, the stage is set for Kim Jong-un to step forward into leadership, carrying with him the legacy of his forefathers and the unique insights gained from his time away from home. His story continues as he moves toward becoming one of the most watched and enigmatic figures in modern history. Chapter 3. Rising Through the Ranks. Upon returning to North Korea after his education abroad, Kim Jong-un found himself at the beginning of a path that had been meticulously laid out for him. This path was not chosen by him, but for him, as the heir apparent in one of the world's most secretive regimes. The young Kim was about to undertake a rapid ascent through the military and political ranks of his country, a journey marked by grooming for leadership under the watchful eyes of the nation's elite. Kim Jong-un's return was quiet but significant. It marked the start of his formal introduction into the intricate world of North Korean politics and military strategy. The young man, who had once experienced the freedoms of a Swiss school, now entered the most pivotal phase of his preparation for leadership. His father, Kim Jong-il, and other high-ranking officials began to guide him, teaching him the ropes of governance and control. His rise through the ranks began in earnest. Despite his young age, Kim Jong-un was quickly given high-ranking titles and responsibilities. The first major public indication of his rising status came in 2010, when he was made a 4-star general. This appointment was surprising to the outside world, as he had not been known to have any significant military experience. However, within the structure of North Korean governance, where loyalty and lineage often outweigh formal military prowess, his ascent was part of a carefully orchestrated plan. Following his military promotion, Kim Jong-un was appointed to significant positions within the Workers' Party of Korea. He became a vice-chairman of the Central Military Commission and soon took other key roles that signified his importance to the country's leadership. Each appointment was a stepping stone, designed to solidify his future as the leader and to ensure a smooth transition of power. During this time, Kim Jong-un was often seen by his father's side during public events and inspections. These were not just mere appearances, they were part of his on-the-job training. He was learning how to handle public engagements, state affairs, and the management of the military. His father was a stern teacher, showing him how to maintain the image of a strong, decisive leader, which was vital in a country that valued firm leadership and control. The grooming process was intense and all-encompassing. Kim Jong-un was exposed to the inner workings of the government, including its secretive nuclear program. He was also involved in economic planning and the country's strategies for dealing with the outside world. Every step was calculated to prepare him for the enormity of ruling North Korea. Key influencers in this phase of his life included his aunt and uncle, who were close confidants of his father and prominent figures in their own right within the regime. They were part of his inner circle, trusted to help mold him into a leader. They provided guidance on various aspects of governance and personal conduct, shaping his approach to leadership. Kim Jong-un's education in leadership was not limited to military and political strategy. He was also taught the crucial art of maintaining the Kim family's legacy through propaganda. He learned how to present himself to the public, how to speak, and how to carry the mythology of his family forward. This was essential for ensuring public support and loyalty, which were the pillars of the regime's stability. As he moved from one leadership role to another, Kim Jong-un's persona began to take shape. He was portrayed as strong and resolute, a necessary image that was cultivated through public appearances and state media. The narrative being built around him was clear. He was the rightful heir, ready to lead his people with the same strength and determination as his father and grandfather before him. This chapter of Kim Jong-un's life was filled with rapid changes and significant responsibilities. From a young man fresh from school to a leader in the making, his rise through the ranks was not just a function of his lineage, but a carefully managed process of preparing him for the realities of leadership in one of the most challenging political landscapes in the world. By the time his father passed away in late 2011, Kim Jong-un was ready, at least in the eyes of the regime, to take on the mantle of leadership. His grooming process was complete, and he stood at the threshold of power, equipped with the knowledge and skills imparted by his mentors and the legacy of his family. The stage was set for him to lead, to make decisions, and to shape the future of North Korea. Chapter 4. The Ascension to Power. The cold December air of 2011 was heavy with anticipation and uncertainty in North Korea as news of Kim Jong-il's passing swept through the nation. The man who had led the country for over 2 decades was no longer at the helm, and his youngest son, Kim Jong-un, was poised to take over. This chapter marked a critical turning point, not only for North Korea, but for international relations as well. Kim Jong-il's leadership had been characterized by a strong grip on power and an isolationist policy that kept North Korea largely removed from the global stage. His death brought about a tidal wave of speculation and concern, both within the Hermit Kingdom and beyond its borders. Would the young Kim Jong-un, shrouded in mystery and relatively inexperienced, be able to hold the reins of this secluded country? Inside North Korea, the state media quickly orchestrated a seamless transition of sympathy and support towards Kim Jong-un. Television screens and public displays mourned the loss of the dear leader, while simultaneously heralding the rise of the great successor. The propaganda machine worked tirelessly to ensure that the populace viewed Kim Jong-un as the rightful heir, a beacon of continuity and stability. Kim Jong-un's appearance at his father's funeral was his first major public moment as the nation's new leader. Clad in a black Mao suit, he walked alongside the hearse, a scene carefully choreographed to display his sorrow and his readiness to lead. The people of North Korea, many genuinely grieving, many fearful of the future, watched closely, their emotions a complex web of hope, anxiety, and loyalty. The international community watched with equal intensity, but for different reasons. Governments and analysts around the world were eager to understand what Kim Jong-un's leadership would mean for international diplomacy, economic sanctions, and regional security. Initial reactions were cautious. Many countries expressed a guarded optimism, hoping for a new era of engagement and openness with North Korea under Kim Jong-un's rule. However, the transition was not merely about international politics. It was deeply personal for Kim Jong-un. The young leader was now in a position that demanded not just the continuation of his family's legacy, but also the ability to assert his authority and vision. He faced the enormous task of consolidating power in a regime where senior generals and party officials held significant influence. In the weeks and months following his father's death, Kim Jong-un moved swiftly to establish his leadership style. He began appearing more frequently in public, visiting military bases, factories, and cultural institutions. These visits were not just routine inspections. They were a deliberate display of his active engagement in both the economic and military sectors of the country. Each appearance was a message. He was not just the supreme leader in title, but in action as well. At the same time, Kim Jong-un began to build his inner circle, promoting younger officials who were loyal to him and who shared his vision for the future. This was a strategic move, aimed at strengthening his position and ensuring that all major decisions would have the backing of a new generation of leaders. Internally, the reaction to Kim Jong-un's ascent was a mix of orchestrated approval and quiet skepticism. The North Korean public had little choice but to accept the new leader, though many wondered about his capabilities and the direction in which he would take the country. The elite, meanwhile, were watchful, their support conditional on how well the young leader could manage the state's affairs and their interests. Externally, the world waited for signs of what was to come. Would Kim Jong-un pursue a path of reform, or would he continue the policies of his father and grandfather? Initial diplomatic engagements were tentative, as both allies and adversaries looked for indications of the new leader's approach to governance. As the year turned, it became clear that Kim Jong-un was not only determined to maintain his family's legacy, but also to imprint his own style of leadership on North Korea. His first year in power was a dramatic assertion of his authority and a declaration that he was not merely a young successor, but a commanding leader, ready to navigate the complexities of modern-day governance. Thus, the ascension of Kim Jong-un marked not just a change of leadership, but the beginning of a new chapter in North Korean history. It was a chapter filled with questions and possibilities, as the young leader took the reins of one of the most enigmatic countries in the world. Chapter 5. Consolidating Power. As the new leader of North Korea, Kim Jong-un faced the monumental task of consolidating power in a nation where the shadows of his father and grandfather loomed large. His early days in power were not just about learning the ropes. They were about firmly establishing himself as the uncontested leader, capable of steering the country through its complexities. This chapter delves into the strategic moves Kim Jong-un made to secure his position within the government and the military. Following his ascension, Kim Jong-un's first order of business was to ensure loyalty within the ranks of North Korea's elite. This was crucial, as the support of senior military officials and high-ranking party members was essential for a smooth transition of power. Kim Jong-un knew that any sign of weakness or indecision could be exploited by those who doubted his ability to lead. One of his initial steps was to reorganize the military leadership. Kim Jong-un appointed younger officers to key positions, officers who were loyal to him and had demonstrated their allegiance. This not only secured his position, but also injected new energy into the military hierarchy, which had been dominated by older generals loyal to his father. By promoting these younger leaders, Kim Jong-un was not just planning for the present, but was also building a future where his authority would remain unchallenged. Within the Workers' Party of Korea, Kim Jong-un made similar moves. He increased the party's role in governing the country, emphasizing that the party was a crucial part of his leadership style. He held frequent meetings where he was presented as the central figure, reinforcing his image as the supreme leader. Through these meetings, he was able to directly influence party policies and ensure that his strategic objectives were being implemented. Kim Jong-un also focused on strengthening the state's propaganda apparatus. He understood the power of image and narrative in maintaining control over the population. Under his leadership, the state media ramped up its efforts to portray him as a benevolent and capable leader, often showing him in a positive light, interacting with the public and military personnel. These portrayals were designed to build a personal connection with the citizens, depicting him as approachable and concerned with their welfare, continuing the legacy of his family. Another significant area where Kim Jong-un worked to consolidate power was the economy. Recognizing that economic stability was crucial for political stability, he initiated several projects aimed at improving the country's infrastructure and agricultural productivity. These projects were not only important for improving the living standards of his people, but also served as a demonstration of his commitment to developing the country. Kim Jong-un's leadership style was marked by a blend of traditionalism and modernity. While he maintained strict control over the country's affairs, he also introduced more modern practices in the way the government and military operated. He encouraged the use of technology and modern methods in the country's development plans, aiming to bring North Korea up to speed with global standards, albeit slowly and under his strict control. Internationally, Kim Jong-un adopted a dual approach. On one hand, he continued to project North Korea as a formidable state, capable of defending its sovereignty against external threats, particularly from the United States and South Korea. On the other hand, he sought to improve diplomatic relations with other countries, engaging in talks and participating in international events when it suited his strategic interests. However, his rule was not without challenges. Kim Jong-un faced several internal and external pressures that tested his resolve and his ability to govern. These included economic sanctions, military tensions, and the ever-present challenge of maintaining internal stability in a country known for its rigid control over its people. Through these actions, Kim Jong-un not only worked to solidify his control over North Korea, but also sought to carve out his identity as a leader distinct from his predecessors. By securing the loyalty of the military and party, enhancing his image through propaganda, and taking steps to improve the economy, Kim Jong-un aimed to cement his leadership and ensure that his rule would be as enduring as that of his father and grandfather. This chapter in his leadership journey is crucial for understanding how he managed to maintain control over a country as complex and isolated as North Korea. Chapter 6. A New Era of Leadership. With the mantle of leadership firmly in his grasp, Kim Jong-un embarked on a journey marked by subtle yet significant departures from the leadership styles of his father, Kim Jong-il, and grandfather, Kim Il-sung. This new era under Kim Jong-un's rule was characterized by an attempt to project a more relatable and modern image of leadership, aiming to resonate with both the domestic audience and the international community. Kim Jong-un's leadership style diverged in various ways from those of his predecessors. While Kim Il-sung was revered as the charismatic revolutionary founder of North Korea, and Kim Jong-il as the stern, secretive guardian of the state's nuclear ambitions, Kim Jong-un sought to present himself as more accessible and dynamic. He was often depicted in state media as engaging with the public and showing an interest in the mundane aspects of his citizens' lives, whether visiting amusement parks, factories, or even supermarkets. One of the first noticeable changes under Kim Jong-un was his public persona. Unlike his father, who rarely spoke publicly, Kim Jong-un made speeches at major events, including a notable address on New Year's Day, reviving a tradition that his grandfather had started, but his father had discontinued. This approach helped to craft an image of a leader who was both a communicator and a listener, someone who could articulate the hopes and affirm the struggles of his people. In an effort to modernize the country's image and stimulate engagement with the global economy, Kim Jong-un initiated several economic reforms. These included attempts to create special economic zones where foreign investors could undertake joint ventures with North Korean companies. While these zones faced various challenges, they represented a shift towards a more open economic policy compared to the isolationist approaches of the past. Culturally, Kim Jong-un showed a willingness to embrace aspects of Western culture, which was a stark contrast to the severe restrictions his father had imposed. Concerts featuring Disney characters and performances by girl bands dressed in Western-style clothing were promoted as part of his regime's cultural exhibitions. This not only aimed to give a sense of normalcy and modernity within North Korea, but also to soften its image to the outside world. Furthermore, Kim Jong-un sought to portray himself as a family man, often seen accompanied by his wife, Ri Sol-ju, which was a departure from the secretive personal lives of his father and grandfather. His public appearances with his wife, and later with his children, were strategic, aimed at humanizing the leader and, by extension, the regime itself. Under Kim Jong-un, North Korea also made significant advancements in its military capabilities, continuing the country's emphasis on military strength, but coupling it with more frequent and public testing of missiles. This approach was double-edged. It demonstrated his commitment to his country's military development, while also serving as a tool for international diplomacy, projecting strength to negotiate from a position of power. However, these changes were not without their contradictions. The increased visibility and attempts at modernization were juxtaposed with ongoing human rights abuses and strict control over the population, practices that were deeply entrenched in the governance of the country from the time of his predecessors. Kim Jong-un's efforts to present a more relatable image were also reflected in how he handled relationships with other countries. His unexpected diplomatic engagements, such as meetings with the presidents of South Korea and the United States, were departures from the more reclusive diplomacy of his father. These summits were highly publicized and portrayed Kim as a global player, seeking peace and stability on the Korean peninsula. As Kim Jong-un continues to define his era of leadership, it is clear that he is attempting to balance the legacy of his family's rule with the pressures of modern governance. This chapter of his leadership highlights the complexities of being a young leader in a globalized world, trying to retain control while navigating the challenges that come with attempts at economic reform and international diplomacy. In this new era, Kim Jong-un's North Korea remains a study in contrasts between openness and control, tradition and modernization, fear and fascination. As the world watches, the narrative of his leadership continues to unfold, with each step he takes writing a new line in the storied history of the Kim dynasty. Chapter 7: Economic Ambitions. As the leader of one of the most enigmatic countries in the world, Kim Jong-un embarked on a challenging journey to transform North Korea's economy. This chapter explores the various efforts and policies he initiated to stimulate economic growth and development, despite the country's long-standing isolation from much of the international community. Under Kim Jong-un's leadership, North Korea faced numerous economic challenges, including international sanctions, limited access to global markets, and internal inefficiencies. In response, Kim Jong-un launched several domestic policies aimed at economic reform, signaling a new phase in North Korean economic strategy. One of the most significant steps taken by Kim Jong-un was the introduction of the Byungjin policy. This strategy was aimed at simultaneously developing the country's nuclear capabilities and its economy. While the nuclear program garnered most international headlines, less noticed were the economic components of the Byungjin policy, which focused on increasing agricultural production, developing special economic zones, and enhancing technological advancement. In agriculture, Kim Jong-un implemented changes to increase efficiency and production. He introduced more market-like reforms in farming, allowing families to keep a portion of their produce to sell in local markets. This shift was designed to incentivize farmers to produce more than their quotas, thereby boosting overall agricultural output. The government also invested in better farming technologies and infrastructure, aiming to reduce the country's historical dependency on food imports. Kim Jong-un also sought to modernize North Korea's industrial sector. He pushed for the renovation of factories and the construction of new industrial complexes where North Korea could produce a wider range of goods, from textiles to machinery. These industries were particularly focused on increasing exports as a way to bring in much-needed foreign currency. Perhaps the most ambitious of Kim Jong-un's economic initiatives were the special economic zones. Inspired by the success of such zones in China and Vietnam, Kim Jong-un envisioned these areas as hubs of economic innovation and foreign investment. Several zones were established, each targeted at specific industries such as tourism, technology, and manufacturing. While progress was slow and hampered by international sanctions, these zones represented a critical part of Kim Jong-un's vision for a more economically diverse North Korea. Another area of focus was technological advancement. Under Kim Jong-un, North Korea placed a high priority on science and technology as drivers of economic growth. Universities and research institutions received more funding, and the state emphasized the importance of innovations in fields such as information technology, renewable energy, and biotechnology. Kim Jong-un often visited universities and research centers, promoting the role of science in national development. However, these economic ambitions were not without their challenges. International sanctions, primarily due to North Korea's nuclear ambitions, severely limited the country's ability to trade with the outside world. These sanctions affected all sectors of the economy, from banking to shipping, and made it difficult for North Korea to access international markets. Additionally, the country's rigid political system and the government's control over economic activities often stifled entrepreneurship and innovation. Despite these obstacles, Kim Jong-un's policies did lead to some visible changes. Markets became more vibrant, and there was a noticeable increase in consumer goods available to the North Korean people. The presence of mobile phones, although heavily regulated, and other consumer electronics in the hands of North Koreans, was a stark contrast to the situation decades earlier. Kim Jong-un's economic ambitions were part of a broader effort to strengthen his domestic legitimacy and improve the living standards of his people. By attempting to modernize the economy, he hoped to showcase his capability as a leader who could not only develop nuclear weapons, but also bring about economic prosperity. Chapter 8. The Nuclear Quest. In the heart of North Korea, under the leadership of Kim Jong-un, a formidable pursuit was underway, a quest to develop and perfect nuclear capabilities. This chapter delves into the intense and secretive world of North Korea's nuclear program, a cornerstone of Kim Jong-un's strategy to cement his country's status on the global stage and ensure its security. Kim Jong-un inherited a nuclear program that had been initiated by his grandfather and vigorously pursued by his father. His own tenure, however, would see an unprecedented acceleration in nuclear tests and missile launches. This bold progression was not just a display of military might, but also a calculated move to strengthen his negotiating power internationally. Under Kim Jong-un's command, North Korea conducted several nuclear tests, each more powerful than the last. These tests were conducted deep within the mountains of North Korea, away from prying eyes, yet their impact resonated across the globe. Each test was a statement, a defiance of international norms, and a demonstration of the young leader's resolve to not only uphold his family's legacy, but to expand it. The international response to North Korea's nuclear ambitions was swift and severe. The United Nations, along with leading powers such as the United States, China, Russia, Japan, and South Korea, condemned these tests. Sanctions were tightened, aimed at crippling the regime's ability to finance its nuclear program. These sanctions targeted various sectors, including metals, raw materials, and technology that were crucial to North Korea's nuclear and missile technology development. Despite these pressures, Kim Jong-un persisted, arguing that nuclear weapons were essential for the survival of his regime. The narrative promoted within North Korea portrayed these weapons as shields, protecting the nation from perceived external threats, especially from the United States. State media glorified each successful test as a triumph, a testament to North Korea's scientific prowess and independence. The pursuit of nuclear capabilities also had significant domestic implications. Kim Jong-un used the nuclear program to foster national pride and unity. Through carefully orchestrated propaganda, he linked the success of the nuclear tests to the strength and resilience of the North Korean people under his leadership. However, the immense resources directed towards the nuclear program meant that much-needed funds were diverted from other areas, such as the economy and public welfare, exacerbating the hardships faced by ordinary citizens. Internationally, Kim Jong-un's nuclear ambitions isolated North Korea even further. However, it also forced the world to engage with him. Summits with leaders from South Korea, the United States, and China were held, where the young North Korean leader took center stage, discussing issues of security, sanctions, and the potential for peace on the Korean peninsula. These meetings were historic, marking a significant shift in North Korea's international relations. Yet, the diplomatic path was fraught with challenges. Negotiations were complex and often stalled, with each side having vastly different expectations and demands. The world watched as each round of talks unfolded, hopeful yet cautious about the potential outcomes. Kim Jong-un's strategy seemed to oscillate between demonstrating openness to dialogue and returning to aggressive military postures, keeping his adversaries unsettled and always guessing. The chapter of North Korea's nuclear quest under Kim Jong-un is a dramatic saga of defiance, diplomacy, and power dynamics. It encapsulates a young leader's determination to strengthen his rule and secure his country's place in a complex global landscape. As tensions ebbed and flowed, the peninsula remained one of the most sensitive and unpredictable points on the map, a reminder of the enduring challenges of nuclear proliferation and international security. Through this journey, Kim Jong-un emerged not only as a steward of his country's formidable military capabilities, but also as a figure who cannot be ignored in international affairs. His nuclear quest, fraught with peril and controversy, continues to shape his leadership narrative and North Korea's path forward on the world stage. Chapter 9: Diplomacy and Isolation. North Korea, under the leadership of Kim Jong-un, has often been viewed through the lens of its enigmatic policies and its isolated stance on the global stage. However, the young leader's reign has also been marked by unexpected moments of diplomacy, interspersed with long periods of isolation. This chapter delves into the complex relationships between North Korea and the rest of the world, focusing on key diplomatic events and summits that have defined Kim Jong-un's foreign policy. As Kim Jong-un assumed power, he inherited a legacy of tension and suspicion between North Korea and many countries, particularly the United States, South Korea, and Japan. Yet, despite this challenging international environment, there were surprising shifts in North Korea's diplomatic posture under his rule. One of the most significant diplomatic endeavors during Kim Jong-un's leadership was the revival of dialogue with South Korea. The world watched as North and South Korea, two countries still technically at war, began to engage in talks. These discussions were highlighted by several high-profile events, such as the 2018 Winter Olympics in Pyeongchang, where North and South Korea entered the stadium under a unified flag. This symbolic gesture opened the door to further dialogue, which culminated in the Panmunjom Declaration for Peace, Prosperity, and Unification of the Korean Peninsula. The declaration was a result of a series of summits between Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in, the president of South Korea at the time. These summits were held in the Demilitarized Zone, DMZ, the heavily fortified border that separates the two Koreas. The images of Kim Jong-un and Moon Jae-in shaking hands, crossing back and forth over the military demarcation line, were powerful symbols of potential reconciliation and were met with hopeful optimism around the world. Another pivotal moment in North Korean diplomacy under Kim Jong-un was his meetings with the President of the United States. These were unprecedented encounters, given the long history of animosity and standoff between the two countries. The first summit took place in Singapore in 2018, marking the first time a sitting US president had met with a North Korean leader. The summit was highly publicized and resulted in a joint statement where both countries committed to work towards the complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. However, the road to denuclearization proved complex and fraught with misunderstandings. A second summit in Hanoi ended abruptly without an agreement, highlighting the significant challenges that still lay in the path of peace. Despite these setbacks, these summits were historic, representing a dramatic shift from the intense rhetoric and military provocations that had characterized relations in previous years. Kim Jong-un's approach to Russia and China also illustrates the nuanced diplomacy of North Korea. Russia, historically a supporter of North Korea, hosted Kim Jong-un for a summit in Vladivostok. This meeting underscored North Korea's strategy of strengthening ties with its traditional allies amid fluctuating relations with the West. China, North Korea's most important ally and economic lifeline, played a crucial role in Kim Jong-un's diplomatic strategies. Meetings between Kim Jong-un and Xi Jinping, the president of China, were crucial for securing economic support and political backing. These meetings were also strategic, as they signaled to the world, particularly to the United States, that China was a key player in any security dialogues about the Korean Peninsula. Despite these diplomatic overtures, North Korea remained largely isolated, its economy hamstrung by international sanctions. The country's human rights record and its nuclear ambitions continued to be significant barriers to fully normalized relations with much of the international community. Chapter 10. Cult of Personality. In North Korea, the leadership of Kim Jong-un is not just political, it is woven deeply into the cultural fabric of the nation through a powerful cult of personality. This chapter explores how Kim Jong-un's image is crafted and maintained by state propaganda, and the profound effects this has on the people of North Korea. From the moment of his ascendancy, Kim Jong-un's public persona was carefully shaped to ensure continuity and reverence within the society. His image as a leader is omnipresent, from posters and billboards to daily television broadcasts, creating an aura that is both awe-inspiring and omnipotent in the eyes of the North Korean public. The state propaganda apparatus in North Korea is highly sophisticated, with its primary role being to glorify Kim Jong-un. Following in the footsteps of his father, Kim Jong-il, and his grandfather, Kim Il-sung, Kim Jong-un is presented as a guardian of the nation, a brilliant strategist, and a benevolent leader who has the people's best interests at heart. This portrayal is consistent and pervasive across all media and public discourse. One of the key themes in the depiction of Kim Jong-un is his closeness to the people. State media frequently shows him visiting factories, farms, and military bases, where he is seen smiling and engaging with workers and soldiers. These visits are not merely routine inspections, but are portrayed as evidence of his deep concern for the welfare and development of his country. The message is clear. Kim Jong-un is a leader who is directly involved in all aspects of North Korean life. The promotion of his persona also includes elements of myth-making, which is a significant aspect of the leadership cult in North Korea. Stories of his extraordinary abilities began to circulate right from his early days as leader. These tales, whether they involve his prowess in sports or his intellectual capabilities, are designed to build a larger-than-life image that is both relatable and awe-inspiring. Education plays a crucial role in the cult of personality. From a young age, North Korean children are taught to revere their leader. School curricula are infused with stories and lessons about Kim Jong-un's greatness and the Kim family's historic role in protecting and building the nation. This education ensures that from childhood, citizens of North Korea develop a deep-seated loyalty and admiration for their leader. The effects of this pervasive propaganda are profound. For many North Koreans, Kim Jong-un is more than just a political leader. He is a paternal figure who embodies the ideals and aspirations of the nation. The emotional connection that people feel towards him is continuously reinforced through daily exposure to propaganda that praises his leadership and achievements. However, this glorification comes with a cost. The singular focus on the leader's persona can obscure real issues facing the country, such as economic difficulties and social challenges. The cult of personality also stifles public debate and critical thinking, as dissent or criticism of the leader is unimaginable under such a regime. The penalties for questioning the official narrative can be severe, leading to a society where public loyalty is often mixed with private skepticism. Internationally, the cult of personality around Kim Jong-un has often been met with skepticism and concern. Observers outside North Korea see this as a mechanism of control, one that maintains the power of the regime by limiting the flow of information and suppressing dissent. Chapter 11. Life in North Korea. Under the rule of Kim Jong-un, life in North Korea presents a stark contrast between the public image of prosperity projected by state propaganda and the everyday reality experienced by its citizens. This chapter delves into the daily life of the average North Korean, exploring both the hardships and the structured society that defines existence within this secretive state. North Korea, a country often shrouded in mystery and speculation, operates under a regime that emphasizes collectivism, loyalty, and resilience. The people are constantly reminded of their leaders' sacrifices and are taught to persevere despite global sanctions and economic struggles. The lifestyle of the general populace is marked by simplicity and often necessity. In urban areas like Pyongyang, the capital, the cityscape is carefully curated to impress both locals and foreigners. Here, the streets are lined with monuments, large public spaces, and well-maintained buildings that showcase the regime's achievements. Residents of Pyongyang are often those who have proven their loyalty to the regime, and thus they enjoy better living conditions compared to those in rural areas. They have access to more consistent electricity, public transportation, and even some consumer goods, which are scarce outside the city. Contrastingly, life in rural North Korea is tougher. The majority of the population is involved in agriculture, working long hours in fields to meet government-imposed production quotas. Despite their crucial role in feeding the nation, these farmers live with minimal comforts, and their access to necessities like heating, healthcare, and education is limited. The disparity between the rural and urban populace is significant, with rural areas often lacking the basic infrastructure seen in Pyongyang. The state's distribution system, which is supposed to provide food and goods to the citizens, is often unreliable and insufficient, leading many to depend on informal markets known as jangmadang. Over the years, these markets have become vital for survival, where people trade goods and food to supplement what the state provides. This shift towards a market-based economy is a significant change from the past, indicating a pragmatic adaptation by the people to their economic realities. The lifestyle of the leadership in North Korea, as portrayed by the state media, is vastly different. Kim Jong-un and his circle are shown enjoying a life of luxury and abundance, with access to the best amenities and goods the country can offer. State media often shows the leader attending lavish performances, visiting sophisticated factories, and hosting dignitaries in opulent settings. This portrayal is intended to reinforce the leader's status and the supposed success of his governance. Education in North Korea serves the dual purpose of instruction and indoctrination. From a young age, children are taught to revere their leaders and understand the country's ideology. Schools focus heavily on the achievements of the Kim family, and students learn that their loyalty to the regime is paramount. This education is consistent across the country, ensuring that every citizen grows up with a uniform understanding of the state's expectations. Healthcare in North Korea is officially free and universal, but the quality and availability vary dramatically. While Pyongyang boasts the best medical facilities in the country, accessible primarily to the elite and those within the party's favor, rural clinics often lack essential supplies and equipment. The average North Korean has limited access to modern medical care, and traditional medicine is commonly used to supplement the gaps. The contrast between the lives of ordinary citizens and the elite can also be seen in the leisure activities available. While the leadership enjoys ski resorts and water parks, most North Koreans have limited options for leisure, often partaking in community-based activities such as mass dances or local sports. Chapter 12: Challenges and Crises. Kim Jong-un's tenure as the leader of North Korea has been marked by a series of significant challenges and crises, both on a national and international scale. This chapter explores how these events were handled and the responses from both the leadership and the general populace. Under Kim Jong-un, North Korea has faced numerous economic sanctions imposed by the international community. These sanctions were reactions to the country's nuclear tests and missile launches aimed at curtailing its ability to fund its controversial programs. The sanctions targeted various sectors, including banking, trade, and military investments, putting immense pressure on the country's already fragile economy. The impact of these sanctions was felt most acutely by the ordinary citizens of North Korea. Basic commodities became scarce, and prices soared, making daily life increasingly difficult. Despite the hardships, state media continued to project an image of defiance and self-reliance, urging the people to rally around their leader and the principles of yuche, or self-sufficiency, which has been a cornerstone of North Korean ideology since the time of Kim Il-sung. In addition to economic challenges, North Korea has also been hit by natural disasters, such as floods and droughts, which have had devastating effects on agriculture. As a significant portion of the population relies on farming, these events severely threatened food security and heightened the potential for famine. Kim Jong-un's approach to these crises has involved a combination of public appearances and private actions. Publicly, he has been shown visiting affected areas, presenting himself as a leader who is concerned about his people's suffering. During these visits, broadcasted widely through state-controlled media, Kim Jong-un would often issue directives for relief and reconstruction efforts, portraying a responsive and paternal leadership style. Privately, however, the response from the leadership has often involved stricter measures to maintain control. For example, the government has sometimes tightened border security to prevent the flow of information about the crises to the outside world. Moreover, there have been reports of crackdowns on market activities, especially when they are perceived to undermine state control over the economy. The contrast between public and private responses is also evident in the realm of international diplomacy. Publicly, North Korea's stance has often been confrontational, using strong rhetoric against international sanctions and military exercises in the region. However, privately, there have been instances where North Korea has engaged in dialogue with other nations, suggesting a more pragmatic approach than what is publicly admitted. The leadership's handling of these crises has had mixed results. On one hand, the regime's ability to maintain control and keep the populace rallied behind the leader has been effective in preserving stability. On the other hand, the prolonged economic hardships and the impacts of natural disasters have exacerbated the challenges faced by the ordinary people, leading to increased suffering and hardship. Internally, the government's response to these challenges has often been to tighten its grip on power. This includes increasing surveillance and control over the population, particularly in border areas and markets. Such measures are justified by the state as necessary to protect the country from external threats and internal instability. Chapter 13. The Leader's Image Abroad. In the international arena, the image of Kim Jong-un is multifaceted and significantly shaped by the foreign media. This chapter explores how he is perceived outside North Korea and discusses the impact of these portrayals on international relations and perceptions. Kim Jong-un ascended to power in North Korea at a relatively young age, and his rise was met with curiosity and concern by the international community. His leadership began amid a backdrop of ongoing nuclear tensions and a history of his country's isolation from much of the world. The foreign media have often depicted him as an enigmatic figure, emphasizing the secretive nature of his regime and the unpredictability associated with his decisions. In Western media, Kim Jong-un is frequently portrayed as a ruler of a repressive regime, with a focus on his authoritarian style of governance. Reports often highlight the contrast between his luxurious lifestyle and the hardships faced by the North Korean populace. The international press also scrutinizes his regime's human rights record, painting a grim picture of repression and control. The portrayal of Kim Jong-un in international media is heavily influenced by his nuclear ambitions. Each nuclear test or missile launch is met with headlines that characterize him as a global threat, heightening tensions and fostering a narrative of unpredictability and danger. These portrayals influence public opinion and governmental responses, affecting diplomatic relations and policy decisions. However, there have been periods when Kim Jong-un's image in the foreign media has shifted slightly. For instance, during the 2018 to 2019 summits with South Korea and the United States, his portrayal took on a more diplomatic tone. Media coverage highlighted his efforts to engage in dialogue and his meetings with world leaders, which were seen as steps toward potential peace on the Korean peninsula. These events allowed the international audience to see a different aspect of his leadership, focusing more on his role in diplomatic engagements rather than solely on his authoritarian rule. Asian media perspectives, particularly from countries like China and Russia, tend to be more measured. These countries, being North Korea's closest allies, often portray Kim Jong-un in a neutral or sometimes positive light, emphasizing regional stability and the importance of dialogue. This portrayal reflects their geopolitical interests and the delicate balance they maintain in their relationships with North Korea. The impact of these international media portrayals is profound. They shape global perceptions of Kim Jong-un and influence international policy towards North Korea. Western sanctions and diplomatic strategies are often justified by the portrayal of Kim as an unpredictable and dangerous leader, while calls for dialogue and engagement are supported by more neutral portrayals. Furthermore, the international media's focus on Kim Jong-un also affects how global humanitarian issues related to North Korea are addressed. The media often links humanitarian aid and human rights advocacy to its political coverage, influencing how international organizations and foreign governments approach aid and intervention. Chapter 14. Unseen Aspects of Leadership. Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, often appears in the global media spotlight due to his political actions and the secretive nature of his country. However, there are facets of his life that are less well known, but equally integral to understanding his persona. This chapter delves into his personal interests, hobbies, and the significance of his public appearances, providing a broader view of his life beyond the realm of politics. Personal interests and hobbies. Kim Jong-un has a variety of interests that paint a more nuanced picture of him as an individual. Among these, his fondness for basketball is particularly notable. He is known to be an avid basketball fan, with a particular admiration for the 1990s Chicago Bulls. His passion for the sport has been highlighted during his public appearances with Dennis Rodman, the former NBA star who has visited North Korea several times. Aside from sports, Kim Jong-un also has an interest in music and cinema. These hobbies are reflective of his upbringing, which included exposure to Western culture during his school years in Switzerland. The influence of this period is evident in some of the cultural events he has promoted in North Korea, such as orchestral concerts and performances that include elements of Western pop culture. Public appearances and their significance. Kim Jong-un's public appearances are meticulously planned and highly symbolic. Each appearance is designed to convey specific messages both to his own people and to the international community. Often these appearances are at military parades or significant cultural events where he is seen promoting the strength and unity of the country. One significant aspect of his public appearances is his interaction with the military. These visits are not only about inspecting troops and weapons, but also about reinforcing his image as a powerful military leader. By appearing in military settings, he projects the image of a strong, decisive leader who is capable of defending North Korea against any external threats. Another important facet of his public persona is his involvement in economic projects. He is frequently shown visiting factories, farms, and economic development sites. These visits are aimed at demonstrating his commitment to improving the living standards of his people. They also serve to promote a narrative of progress and modernization, despite the country's international isolation and economic sanctions. Lesser-known aspects of his life. Despite his high-profile status, many aspects of Kim Jong-un's life remain shrouded in mystery. His family life, in particular, is kept private, with only limited information available to the public. He is known to be married to Ri Sol-ju, and they are believed to have children. But details about his domestic life are rarely disclosed. Another lesser-known aspect is his educational background. His time studying in Switzerland was formative, exposing him to Western ideas and lifestyles. This experience is thought to have influenced some of his policies, especially those related to cultural events and economic reforms. Chapter 15. Family Ties. The family dynamics within North Korea's leadership, particularly under Kim Jong-un, play a crucial role in both the governance of the country and the public image of the regime. This chapter delves into Kim Jong-un's personal life, including his marriage and children, and examines the influence and roles of his siblings in the nation's governance. Marriage and children. Kim Jong-un's personal life is largely kept out of the public eye, reflecting the secretive nature of the regime. However, it is known that he is married to Ri Sol-ju, who was introduced to the world as his wife in 2012. Ri Sol-ju is often seen by his side during public appearances, and her presence is believed to be part of a carefully constructed image meant to portray Kim Jong-un as a family-oriented man and a leader concerned with the welfare of his nation. The details about their children are sparse, but it is believed they have at least one child, possibly more. The privacy surrounding his children is strict, reflecting the regime's emphasis on security and control. The children are likely being raised away from the public eye, much like Kim Jong-un was during his own childhood. The role of siblings. Kim Jong-un's siblings also play significant roles within the North Korean political landscape, each contributing in different ways to the governance and stability of the regime. Kim Yo-jong, Kim Jong-un's younger sister, Kim Yo-jong, has emerged as a key figure in North Korea's political arena. She is often seen at her brother's side during major diplomatic events and has been involved in the party's propaganda and agitation department. Her visibility increased during the North Korea-United States summits, where she played a significant role in the preparations and execution of these high-stakes meetings. Kim Yo-jong's position within the government has been seen as an indicator of her rising influence and potential as a caretaker of the regime's legacy. Kim Jong-chol, Kim Jong-un's older brother, Kim Jong-chol, is known to be less involved in politics and more interested in music. Unlike his siblings, Kim Jong-chol has maintained a low profile and does not hold any known significant positions within the North Korean government. His absence from public political life has led to speculation about his role and status within the family, but it is generally understood that he does not wield political influence comparable to Kim Jong-un or Kim Yo-jong. Family influence on governance. The involvement of Kim Jong-un's family members in governance is not just a reflection of familial ties, but also a strategic move to consolidate power within the Kim dynasty. By involving his sister in significant state affairs, Kim Jong-un ensures loyalty and continuity in the regime's top echelons. This strategy mirrors the actions of his father, Kim Jong-il, who also placed trusted family members in key positions. The family dynamics within the Kim dynasty are complex and strategically important for maintaining the image and stability of the regime. The public roles of Kim Jong-un's wife and sister help humanize the leader and reinforce the narrative of a unified, strong leadership front. Meanwhile, the more private aspects of his family, like his children and his less prominent siblings, remind us of the secretive nature of the regime, where personal details are guarded and revealed only if they serve a strategic purpose. Chapter 16. Looking to the future. As Kim Jong-un continues to lead North Korea, the international community watches closely, speculating on the future policies and potential reforms he might implement. This chapter explores the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead for North Korea under Kim Jong-un's leadership, highlighting the key areas where changes might occur and the impact these could have both domestically and internationally. Future policies and potential reforms. North Korea, under Kim Jong-un, has shown signs of wanting to develop its economy while maintaining its political ideology. The leader has initiated several projects aimed at improving infrastructure and increasing foreign investment through special economic zones. Looking to the future, it is possible that Kim Jong-un may continue to focus on economic reforms, albeit cautiously, to ensure they do not undermine the centralized power structure. Technology and science could be significant areas of development. Kim Jong-un has shown interest in modernizing the country's technological capabilities, which could lead to improvements in the economy and the standard of living. However, any technological advancements will likely be tightly controlled and used to bolster the regime's propaganda and surveillance capabilities. There is also speculation about potential reforms in agriculture to address food security, a perennial issue in North Korea. Kim Jong-un might implement more modern farming techniques and better resource management strategies to increase productivity and reduce dependency on food imports. The challenges ahead. Despite the potential for economic reforms, Kim Jong-un faces numerous challenges that could affect his ability to govern effectively. The international sanctions imposed due to his nuclear ambitions have severely restricted the economy, limiting access to foreign markets and putting pressure on the country's financial resources. These sanctions will likely continue to be a significant barrier to economic development unless there is a substantial change in North Korea's international relations, particularly concerning its nuclear program. Human rights issues also pose a challenge to North Korea's international standing. The global community has repeatedly criticized the country for human rights abuses, which could hinder diplomatic relations and economic partnerships. Addressing these concerns might be necessary for North Korea to engage more fully with the world, though any changes in this area would have to be carefully balanced with the regime's need for control. Opportunities for growth. Despite these challenges, there are opportunities for growth and development if Kim Jong-un can navigate the complex landscape of international politics and economic management. If North Korea can find a way to ease tensions with the international community, there could be new opportunities for trade and economic development. Diplomatic engagement, like the summits with South Korea and the United States, has shown that dialogue is possible, and these interactions could lead to a reduction in sanctions over time. There is also potential for internal development that could benefit the people of North Korea. Investments in infrastructure, healthcare, and education can improve the quality of life and increase the regime's domestic legitimacy. By focusing on these areas, Kim Jong-un has the opportunity to present himself as a leader who is not only powerful, but also committed to the welfare of his people. Chapter 17. Conclusion. Kim Jong-un, the enigmatic leader of North Korea, stands as a pivotal figure both in his country and on the global stage. His leadership, marked by a mix of tradition and modernity, has shaped North Korea's current identity and will likely influence its future trajectory. This chapter reflects on his impact and the complex legacy he continues to build. Since ascending to power in 2011, Kim Jong-un has navigated North Korea through a labyrinth of domestic and international challenges. Domestically, he has sought to solidify his authority through significant military parades, economic reforms, and a robust cult of personality that portrays him as a benevolent and omnipotent leader. Internationally, his leadership has been characterized by a volatile mix of nuclear tests and diplomatic engagements, keeping the world attentive and often anxious. Kim Jong-un's impact on North Korea has been profound. He has introduced economic policies aimed at improving the nation's infrastructure and increasing its technological capabilities. These initiatives suggest a desire to modernize the country while maintaining the centralized control characteristic of his family's rule. Under his guidance, North Korea has seen the development of special economic zones, an increased emphasis on agriculture, and a push towards more visible technological displays, including the expansion of the Pyongyang metro and construction of science complexes. However, Kim's leadership has also perpetuated the isolation and hardships faced by ordinary North Koreans. The country's human rights record remains a point of significant international criticism, with reports of widespread abuses and a lack of fundamental freedoms. The economic sanctions, driven by the nuclear program, continue to impact the economy, making life challenging for the general population. On the international front, Kim Jong-un has proven to be both a shrewd and unpredictable player. His meetings with global leaders, including an unprecedented summit with a sitting US president, have been steps towards diplomacy that were unimaginable in his father's era. These moments, combined with his continued nuclear ambitions, depict a leader striving to position North Korea as a formidable force on the world stage. The future of North Korea under Kim Jong-un holds potential paths of both reform and continued tension. If economic reforms continue and expand, there might be a possibility for improved living standards within the country and a gradual opening to the global economy. Conversely, the ongoing development of nuclear capabilities could maintain or even increase the nation's isolation, depending on international reactions and the dynamics of global politics. Reflecting on Kim Jong-un's leadership, it is clear that he has significantly impacted how North Korea is viewed globally. His blend of old guard rhetoric with new era tactics has kept the international community watchful and occasionally hopeful for a more open North Korea. Whether his legacy will be one of opening up to the world or reinforcing its separations remains to be seen. What is certain is that Kim Jong-un will continue to be a central figure in the narrative of North Korea, a country at the crossroads of tradition and change. As we consider his role in shaping North Korea's path forward, it is essential to watch how his strategies evolve in response to both domestic needs and international pressures. The coming years will undoubtedly be critical in determining the direction of North Korea under Kim Jong-un's rule, as the world looks on with a mix of concern and curiosity.